Did you know that there are two countries that occupy the island known as Ireland? I think most of you probably know that, and you may remember this from some civics lessons and what you picked up through the news media over the course of your lifetimes. But this morning, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I guess our time, Fox News Channel came on with Fox and Friends, and the woman who took the place of Elizabeth Hasselbeck, her name is Ainsley Earhart, obviously a pretty blonde and good eye candy for television news in the morning. She says to her two colleagues on the set today, she says, I didn't know that Ireland was actually split in two. And that with the exit from the EU by the United Kingdom, that if you live in Northern Ireland and you work in Southern Ireland, that you're now going to have to pass through a customs check when the devolution from the European Union takes place. And her two co-hosts quickly changed the subject. In other words, Ainsley, that's only been the story over there for the last 94 years. And over the course of the last several decades, up until just recently, the Irish were at each other's throats, and it dominated news all over the world. But you may not have noticed that because you were applying your makeup this morning. I want to thank you for joining us. It's 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. I'm working on very little sleep, actually, from last night because it was fascinating watching the coverage last night of what was going on in the United Kingdom. I happened to get up early still this morning, though, and just to kind of recap. But by the time I went to bed, I knew what the result was going to be. I just wanted to see what the final numbers were. First thing I did is I went directly to the living room, turned the television back on. I'd been watching the coverage last night on BBC. And let me tell you, if you may think that the media in the United States is the most liberal and fawning over liberals and fellow travelers anywhere on the planet until you watch the BBC, and then you realize, no, this is a contagion that is spread around much of the world. So very, very liberal at the BBC, and they have often skewed stories to try to meet the needs of their own liberal staff versus telling people the straight truth or the facts. It's really about the facts. The truth you can make up your own mind about. But the long faces among many of those people on the BBC last night was just fun to watch, except for there was a fellow named Alex Salmon. Now, he's not well known in this country, but in that part of the world, he's a huge power player. For many, many years, I believe from about 2007 until 2014, he was the leader of the nationalist movement in Scotland, and they were looking, of course, they had a referendum that it failed a few years ago for Scottish independence, and they were planning on breaking away. And then Salmon stepped down from that post, left it to one of his colleagues, and he got himself elected to the main parliament in England. But he's still with the Scottish National Party, and he was sitting there on the set last night grinning ear to ear because what does this mean? The Scottish voted overwhelmingly in favor of remaining in the European Union. The English and the Welsh voted overwhelmingly against remaining, and then the folks in Northern Ireland were about 50-50, slight edge, I think, to remain. So the Scottish are now saying, well, wait a minute. We'd rather be in the EU than in the UK. They love their acronyms, right? So the Scottish are now talking again about another vote to secede so they can remain in the European Union. So he was the happiest guy on the set. Everyone else, the jaws were dropping and hitting the floor, and they were all saying, but our polling data said, and as elites, we always believe our polling data. One of the great leaders of this movement was a fellow by the name of Nigel Farage, who, if you've ever seen some of the videos of this man on YouTube, not only is he pointed, but he is funny, he's entertaining, he's a lot like their own version of Donald Trump. And he had said just before they started counting votes that he didn't think that his side was going to win. But he had this wry smile on his face. And he said, no, he said, I think that the other side went out and, bought some votes and they'll end up turning this thing in the Remain favor. And he said, which ruins my plans for the evening because he said, I had expected that if that the Leave column won, that I would go out and get hammered. He jokes a lot about drinking heavily and smoking. And he does. I think 60 Minutes did a profile on him where he just basically went from pub to pub to pub to talk to voters and had a glass of beer with every one of them. So but it's part of his public image. I think in reality, he doesn't have a beer belly. So in reality, you have a sip for the camera, then you put it down. And then he vanished because later in the show, the BBC went to the headquarters of his party and his assistant was there. And they said, well, The anchor angrily says, Nigel Farage was supposed to be with us, but nobody can find him. Well, by then, you knew what the result was going to be, so Farage was keeping his promise. He was out getting hammered. And then his assistant says, we had polling data earlier today that said we were going to win 52 to 48. And wouldn't you know, they had the only polling data that turned out to be right. 12 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Why were so many people wrong about this? And there was a comment this morning from an Englishman on Fox who said, I want to return the country to what it used to be. Does that sound a lot like Make America Great Again? Think about that for a moment, my friends. Think about that. This is a country, Great Britain, that once ruled 2/5 of the world. Not all that long ago, within my lifetime, within many of your lifetimes. And then it threw it all away. And then they said, well, we've been so bad around the world with our colonial efforts that we have to open our gates and let everyone come here and feed at the public trough. And they have been overrun by migrants. That means Islam. People there are beginning to get weary of that. They want no more of it. They're sick to death of people trying to change their country to feed off their own tax dollars and to tell them now how they're going to live. I mentioned my friend Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil on the program yesterday on another subject. Well, he was telling me earlier this week, a couple of years ago, he made a trip to England, and he said some of their friends wanted them to go to a pub in Whitechapel. Now, Whitechapel was infamous back in the late 1900s or late 1800s. That's where Jack the Ripper did his dirty work. And he said they came out of the tube and they came up the stairs, and he said you would have thought you were in Baghdad. Now, do you see parallels for our own country when it comes to opening the gates and letting all these people in, not just from Africa and the Middle East, but also from south of our border? And you think it'll have an impact on our elections this coming fall? Because all across Europe, it's not just England. There are nationalist parties in Poland and Hungary and Italy and Germany, in France and in Spain, and they are gaining strength. We have callers with us this morning. 736-0300 is our number. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. I'm celebrating that myself. Nigel Farage also made a statement that I believe should go down in history books, where they're getting rid of all this corruption over there. He said that even the weather is better today.
It was. It rained very hard in London yesterday, and some of the liberals on BBC were saying that depressed the Remain vote because people didn't want to go out and get wet. Yeah, it's a lot like the USA in that case. You're up next, and you're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to World Global Government yesterday with that vote, because obviously the elitists of the planet think they're better than we are, smarter and so forth. They've been working for global government under United Nations primarily for a long, long time, ever since the UN and before. So what happened is we've got these trade agreements that Trump is against, and we should all be against, as part of this deal to combine us with not only the Pacific Rim countries, but with the EU. And so, this whole deal, and of course, the immigration thing, part of those trade agreements is what you were just talking about, unlimited immigration of low-cost workers of all sorts. And you think we have an unemployment problem now?
Yeah.
It'll get a lot worse.
Again, it is a great day, and as Farage called it yesterday, thank you for the call, sir. Farage said it was really the new English Independence Day. Donald Trump landed in Scotland this morning. I don't know if a lot of you knew that, but he's not necessarily over to the United Kingdom because of this. He already had plans to go there. It's the grand opening of his renovated golf course in Turnberry. But he did take a few minutes in his opening remarks to discuss a little bit about what had happened. And he even had a few conciliatory remarks for David Cameron, the British Prime Minister. Cameron, by the way, just oozes boring, but it's a British trait. But Trump was trying to find a little common ground.
I think David Cameron's a good man. He was wrong on this. He didn't get the mood of his country right. He was surprised. I think he was very surprised to see what happened. But he's a good man, and he felt that way, and probably did the right thing. But we'll see what happens. But I like David Cameron.
Cameron, by the way, when he says probably did the right thing, that's because Cameron announced he didn't get the job done, so he's going to be resigning.
I fought this campaign in the only way I know how, which is to say directly and passionately what I think and feel, head, heart, and soul. I held nothing back. I was absolutely clear about my belief that Britain is stronger, safer, and better off inside the European Union.
Yeah, he just can sway people so much with that approach. As I fought very hard for what I wanted to do, and then we did it, and we did not succeed. Therefore, oh boy, Neville Chamberlain redux. No one should be surprised, though, according to Trump, of all people, by the result.
People want to take their country back. They want to have independence in a sense. And you see it with Europe, all over Europe. You're going to have more than just, in my opinion, more than just what happened last night. You're going to have, I think, many other cases where they want to take their borders back. They want to take their monetary back. They want to take a lot of things back. They want to be able to have a country again.
What a shock. We have another caller with us. Caller, you're up next on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Thing is, in Europe, they're saying that all kinds of countries want to get out of the European Union now, and they're getting ready to all vote for this. So it looks like it's about to completely collapse in on itself. So I don't want to hear any more Christians out there telling us that this is the revived Roman Empire. Okay, knock it off already. Thank you.
They've been knocking my doors down, telling me that. 818, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Trump says there's a very simple explanation as to why this happened.
People want to see borders. They don't necessarily want people pouring into their country that they don't know who they are and where they come from. They have no idea. And I think, it not only did it win, but it won by a much bigger margin than people thought it would happen.
Yeah, that's true, because yesterday they were all saying, well, it'll be close, but it'll be 52-48 remain. And that's not just a 4-point swing, that's an 8-point swing if you think about that for a moment, right? Am I doing that math right in my head? Because it was not just 4 points in favor of remaining, it was they lost that, and then they lost by the other 4 points. So this is from Roger Simon. He's a writer at PJ Media and several other places. Those same elites, he writes, had convinced each other they would win and therefore convinced the usual suspects, media, pollsters, and sadly, the financiers that they were right. They were wrong, he writes. Meanwhile, Trump should take up the gauntlet for the U.S. and the U.K. now. Why wait? Act like the president. We could use one. Donald has a natural ally in the leading Leave spokesperson, and that's the conservative former mayor of London, Boris Johnson. The two men are said to be similar, and in many ways they are. Got more details on this coming up in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you on Top Story today. News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. It's 64. Not really going to get a lot warmer today, and a beautiful day tomorrow for the Magic Valley Pet Show over at the college campus of Southern Idaho. We want you to drop by tomorrow and see us there, and then warmer next week. The mainstream media is, of course, all praising this Boris Johnson as being the leader of this Leave campaign, but really it all started. We mentioned Nigel Farage earlier. He's the one fellow who's been the biggest critic of the European Union in English politics, and he had been a strong Thatcherite, a member of the Conservative Party back in the late 1980s. And then when Thatcher got pushed out of the way by John Major and some of the other weaker sisters in the Conservative Party in England, he broke with them and created the United Kingdom Independence Party with a group of friends. And he was really the leader against the European Union. I want to mention that in a minute. Just a couple of thoughts on that. 824, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can be in the political wilderness for a long time. And I would say that he bears some resemblance to Churchill in that sense, who there's actually a book, one of the 3 volumes that was written by William Manchester called The Last Lion about Churchill's life. There's one of the volumes, the middle volume is called Wilderness. It's about how Churchill was pushed off to the side and reviled, and no matter how much he kept saying, you got to watch out for this Hitler guy. You got to watch out. This is something bad's going on over there. Everyone kept saying, shut up, shut up. You're only going to make him angrier, Winston. Shut up, shut up, shut up. And that's how they were dealing with Churchill at the time. Well, what we've seen with Farage, especially over the last decade, is shut up, shut up, shut up. Come on, you're only going to make the bankers mad. You're only going to make these guys over in Brussels mad. Shut up, shut up, shut up. And he's been saying, yeah, but this is a great country and we've got to protect it. And shut up. Sounds a lot like what goes on in this country, you know, when the liberals try to scream, bigot, 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 every time they see something they don't like. Hey, I want to tell you just quickly about my friend Dr. Eric F. Jones. He is using a holistic systemic approach to wellness, and a great many of you obviously need a little more wellness in your life. He's been practicing for 23 years and has master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy. Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing such as naturopathy, medicinal herbs, nutrition, sound waves, intellectual cognitive self-regulation, and napathy. Now that helps remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He's accepting new patients, and he has weekend and evening appointments available, weekend meaning Saturday. You can contact him by calling 208-731-7178, and he's on Facebook, Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., Mental Health and Wellness Therapist. This is Faraj speaking at a victory party at about 4 o'clock his time in England this morning, and this is a man who basically holds no punches.
We fought against big politics, we fought against lies, corruption and deceit, and today honesty, decency and belief in nation, I think now is going to win. And we would have done it. We would have done it without having to fight, without a single bullet being fired. We'd have done it by damned hard work on the ground, by people like my friend Mr. Banks here. And by people in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party and UKIP and of no party who've taken part in this campaign. And we'll have done it not just for ourselves, we'll have done it for the whole of Europe.
Now, when he said that, we did it without firing a shot. And here you go. This is where the deviousness of the liberal media comes out. They immediately started saying, oh, he's trying to make fun of that member of parliament who was shot and killed last week. Oh, he's a devious, nasty man himself. Look, folks, he didn't fire the shot. You got it? A criminal did. But they can't help themselves. In other words, hey, he won, but we still don't like him. You shouldn't like him, and therefore he must mean. We have a caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Hey, Bill, this is a very exciting historical occurrence here. And I want people to understand that nearly 240 years ago, our ancestors fought for independence from Britain. And now some British today are already calling this Independence Day.
Yeah.
Because of their own small win for sovereignty, border control, economic control. In the future, we're going to celebrate independence together.
I'd be curious to know that large Islamic population living in places like London and Birmingham and Manchester, if they voted to stay or leave, I'll bet that they were, of course, with the Remain vote because they see that as an opportunity to destroy the country. I just have my gut feeling that when the numbers came in, not from the city of London, which is a tiny little place, to be honest with you, but from the London boroughs, that the Islamic vote was heavily in favor of remaining because they're rubbing their hands together thinking, oh, we could take this place over if we keep this up. Not going to happen. 29 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Look, I'll take more of your calls in the next segment of the show. Got a lot of phones ringing this morning on this topic. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We've got a hard break ahead, and I want to try and meet that. But just to tell you that there's some interesting chatter about this all over the internet this morning. One person, though, who says it has no impact on what we do whatsoever politically is Eric Erickson, who, of course, dislikes Donald Trump. So this is Erickson's effort to say, doesn't mean anything, not going to help Trump. Nope. Donald bad. And no relation. He's got a few things to learn. We've got more ahead on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Gosh, it's 65. If you're listening to the program this morning, I like to say thank you. God bless you. But if you're having difficulty hearing the program, you need to be getting in touch with Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. I should point out, the only independently owned hearing practice now in southern Idaho. With advances in healthcare, this is from Dr. Christine Pickup, of course, who runs the office. People are living longer, healthier lives. However, cognitive decline continues to be a major concern. People with hearing loss have a much greater risk of developing cognitive decline, which can lead, of course, to dementia. The greater the loss, the greater the risk. Keeping your hearing healthy is an important part of overall wellness. Knowing your hearing status and doing something about it can lead to a better, healthier life as you age. Now is the time she recommends that you schedule a hearing evaluation, and you can do that by calling Mount Harrison Audiology. The telephone number 208-312-0957. Eric Erickson from The Resurgent, also a talk show host, conservative talk show host in Atlanta, Georgia, he's been the leader of the Never Trump movement. So he's taking a look at what happened in Great Britain and saying, no, it's got no relation to what's going on here, because no. Trump doesn't belong to my church, so no, we can't vote for him. He says the British have just voted for the conservative concept that the government that governs closest to the people governs best. Okay, I'm on board with that, but he said, second, the trust of Washington in this country is actually greater than the trust of the EU in Great Britain. See, I don't know about that. There are so many people on the dole in England that you can be on unemployment there for 4 years and they pay you almost as much as you were making in your old job. So you can sit around the pub and guzzle beer all day and watch cricket, whatever else they're doing. He says the anger of Trump voters is actually not as widespread in this country as anti-EU anger in Great Britain. Well, up until about, last night, 7:15 our time, everyone thought that there wasn't much anger about EU in Britain. And then they looked at the numbers and they said, oh, my gosh. All of the strongholds for Remain have been going down to defeat. He writes, third, the polling actually got it basically right. Well, again, I don't know about that. It was an exceedingly close vote, and the polling reflected that. Now, again, a 4-point swing in favor of leaving the EU when the poll said it was a 4-point swing in favor of staying in the EU is actually an 8-point swing. So, no, Mr. Erickson, it's not close. 8:36, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Here's another reason, though, you stay away from his very same website. He had this earlier this week, about 3 days ago. This is really one of the craziest stories out there right now, and is another reason Britain should flee the European Union. Under a draft proposal, robots would be treated as electronic persons, and companies would be forced to pay Social Security taxes for the robots. This is from his same publication 3 days ago, saying that the EU would like to give personhood to robots so they can collect taxes. It shows you what a big government that is completely out of control and always in need of your money will do in order to find new creative ways to take money. So people build robots and the EU says, aha, we'll call him Jack and we'll take his money from him. First we'll have to give Jack a paycheck, but then we'll take his money from him. 8:37. On the other hand, they don't need the health care that most of, well, obviously a little oil change now and then, but perhaps that can get covered under the National Health Plan in England. 8:37, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hey, coming up in a few minutes, Lance Earl is going to be joining us from Momentu, Idaho. He's going to be talking with us about a big event they have coming up on Independence Day in the United States. So that's on the way in just about 5 minutes, but just wanted to remind you before we do that, I mentioned Boris Johnson earlier. He's the former mayor of London. The current mayor of London, the Muslim that got elected, said that, I won't be trying to put any Sharia law into effect. Immediately then demanded that all advertising with women in skimpy clothes be removed from all subway stations throughout the city of London, bus stations, bus boards, and the like. But no, pay no attention to the Muslim man in the mayor's office. Meanwhile, Johnson, the former mayor, he is pleased with the Brexit result. I think I have him right here.
It's about the very principles of our democracy, the rights of all of us to elect and remove the people who make the key decisions in their lives. And I think that the electorate have searched in their hearts and answered as honestly as they can, and as Gisela says, in a poll on a scale the like of which we have never seen before in this country, they have decided that it is time to vote to take back control.
I had an email from a friend this morning, and I don't hear much from him anymore, but he's an old-style Bircher. That is, he was a member of the John Birch Society 40-some years ago, 40, 50 years ago, when it was at the time considered to be sort of an outcast organization in the United States, which is unfortunate because these are, people who are just flag-waving patriots. But he sent me a note this morning, and he said, the vote's a good thing, but he said the sappers are now going to be out. What is a sapper? Well, a sapper in military terms is someone who goes out and plants the explosives beneath, the embattlements to try to bring them down. And what he's referring to is the people on Wall Street and on the London Exchange and on the European exchanges. In other words, big money doesn't like what happened because this means less control by them and more control by regular people. And so all of these big drops in stock markets around the world, this is really just manufactured, he says, to give the impression that this is a bad thing because they don't want other people to try this. We've got more coming up on a gun event in just a few minutes right here on KLIX.